The unforgiving sun beat down on the endless ochre expanse of the Sahara, shimmering off the heat haze that distorted the horizon. Dr. Aris Thorne, a man whose face was etched with years of sun and dust, wiped sweat from his brow, his gaze fixed on the anomaly picked up by the ground-penetrating radar. For months, his small, dedicated team had toiled in this desolate stretch of North Africa, funded by a last-ditch grant and fueled by Thorne's unwavering conviction. He believed something significant lay hidden beneath the shifting sands, something that hinted at a civilization far older than commonly accepted. Today, that conviction felt less like a pipe dream and more like an imminent reality. The radar readings, now corroborated by initial bore samples, indicated a vast, complex structure deep underground, unlike anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't natural rock formation. It was a sprawling, man-made labyrinth. Beside him, Anya Sharma, a brilliant young geophysicist, pointed to a sharper delineation on the monitor. "It's too regular, Aris, too precise. And look at this. A series of interconnected chambers, almost like a city plan." A gust of wind, laden with fine sand, whipped around them, stinging their faces. The desert, usually silent save for the drone of their generators, seemed to hum with an ancient, almost palpable energy. Aris felt a familiar thrill, a mixture of exhilaration and a prickle of unease. Discoveries like this didn't just happen. They were unveiled, often with consequences. He thought of the whispers in academic circles, the dismissed theories, the careers sidelined for daring to suggest a pre-dynastic African civilization of such magnitude. "This could change everything, Anya," Aris murmured, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Every textbook, every established timeline." He pulled out a worn map, tracing lines with a dust-caked finger. The sheer scale. It doesn't fit any known historical context for this region. Not unless... He paused, the unspoken thought hanging heavy between them, unless history itself was fundamentally wrong. The sun dipped lower, casting long, eerie shadows that stretched like skeletal fingers across the sand. The vastness of their discovery and the isolation of their camp suddenly felt overwhelmingly profound. Don't miss the unfolding mystery. Subscribe to our channel to follow Dr. Thorne's incredible journey beneath the Sahara. The following weeks were a blur of intense activity. They mobilized heavier machinery, brought in more local workers, and meticulously began the excavation. The desert morning air, initially cool, quickly gave way to the oppressive heat of midday. Dust coated everything, clinging to their clothes, equipment, and even their eyelashes. Days bled into nights, illuminated by powerful floodlights, as the team painstakingly uncovered what appeared to be a massive, perfectly circular stone disc embedded deep in the earth. It was clearly an entrance, but how it opened remained a puzzle. Among the team was Khaled, a seasoned local foreman with an intuitive understanding of the desert and its secrets. He had seen many foreign expeditions come and go, but Aris's quiet determination and respect for the land had earned his trust. Khaled examined the disc, tracing ancient weathered symbols that were unlike any hieroglyphs Aris had ever studied. "These are old, Doctor. Older than the stories my grandfather told." His voice was low, laced with a subtle reverence. Aris worked tirelessly alongside Anya, poring over schematics and consulting historical texts, searching for any clue to unlock the massive portal. The symbols, while unfamiliar, seemed to resonate with a primeval geometry. One evening, as the last sliver of sun vanished, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, Anya noticed something. "Look, Aris, the depressions, they align with the constellations we observed last night, specifically during the twilight hours." She pointed to a series of shallow indentations on the disk's surface. Working quickly, guided by a digital star chart, they began to place small, precisely cut stone inserts into the depressions. As the final piece clicked into place, a low, resonant hum emanated from deep within the earth. The air around the disk grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. Slowly, with a deep groan that reverberated through the very ground beneath their feet, the colossal stone disk began to rotate inward, revealing a gaping dark maw. A cold, musty air, untouched for millennia, rushed out, carrying with it the scent of dust, decay, and something else. Something ancient and metallic. A thrill, mingled with a profound sense of trepidation, ran down Aris's spine. They were finally in, armed with powerful headlamps and a mix of scientific eagerness and nervous anticipation. Aris, Anya, and Khaled descended into the darkness. The air inside was thick, still, and strangely cool, a stark contrast to the searing heat above. Their lights cut through the gloom, revealing a massive, perfectly carved tunnel, its walls smooth and adorned with intricate carvings. These weren't crude pictograms. They were sophisticated, stylized depictions of figures with elongated limbs, engaged in what appeared to be complex technological processes. The tunnel led them into an enormous chamber, a vast subterranean city carved directly into the rock. It was a silent, forgotten metropolis, frozen in time. Buildings, tall and angular, rose from the floor, their surfaces covered in the same cryptic symbols. There were no signs of natural erosion, no crumbling walls. The preservation was astonishing. Aris ran his hand along a smooth, cool surface, feeling the weight of millennia. "This is impossible," he whispered, awe mixing with disbelief. The sheer engineering, the scale. Anya's lamp beam fell upon what looked like a central plaza, dominated by a towering obsidian-like monolith that pulsed with a faint, internal light. It was clearly the heart of this ancient city. As they moved deeper, they found evidence of daily life, intricately designed tools, ceramic vessels, and what appeared to be delicate fabrics, all preserved in the dry, airless environment. Yet there were no human remains, no skeletons, no mummified bodies. It was as if the inhabitants had simply vanished. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed from deeper within the city. The sound was not animalistic. It was mechanical, deep and menacing. Khaled instinctively pulled his rifle, his eyes scanning the shadows. "We are not alone, Doctor," he murmured, his voice tense. Aris's heart pounded. This wasn't just an archaeological dig anymore. It was an intrusion. The silence of the ancient city, which had felt so serene moments before, now felt heavy with an unspoken threat. What force or entity still guarded this lost civilization beneath the sands? The mechanical growl intensified, echoing off the ancient walls. From the shadows between the angular buildings, a colossal, multifaceted construct emerged. It was not organic, but an amalgamation of dark, polished stone and an unknown, shimmering metal. Its movements were fluid, almost predatory, and its singular optical sensor, a glowing red orb, fixed on them with chilling intensity. This was the source of the mechanical sound, a sentinel, a guardian of this buried city. Aris, Anya, and Khaled froze, their flashlights illuminating the imposing figure. It moved with an unnerving grace, its form shifting as if made of interlocking plates. Its primary function was clearly defense, and their presence was a violation. Khaled, quick thinking, fired a warning shot that ricocheted harmlessly off the sentinel's metallic shell. The creature paused, its red eye flaring, then accelerated its approach. "It's non-organic, but it's reacting to us," Anya exclaimed, her voice strained. "It's programmed to protect." Aris quickly assessed their limited options. Retreat was their only viable path. "Back! Retreat to the entrance!" he shouted, pulling Anya by the arm. They scrambled back through the subterranean streets, the heavy thud of the sentinel's multi-jointed legs echoing behind them. The ancient city, once a marvel of discovery, had become a perilous maze. Khalid provided covering fire, aiming for the optical sensor, hoping to disable it, but the rounds merely sparked against its impenetrable surface. They reached the massive stone disc entrance, which still hung open. Just as they were about to scramble out, the sentinel launched a tendril of shimmering energy that struck the edge of the disc, causing it to shudder violently. The ancient mechanism groaned, and the disc began to slowly, inexorably close. Panic flared. They were trapped. Aris looked at Anya and Khalid, the grim realization settling in. Their incredible discovery had turned into a deadly trap. The red eye of the sentinel glowed ominously in the narrowing gap of the entrance, a silent promise of their impending fate. Is this the end for Dr. Thorne's team? Find out in the next chapter. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a moment of this thrilling adventure. Trapped inside the closing chamber, with the sentinel steadily advancing, Aris remembered the symbols etched onto the walls and the central monolith. The symbols, he gasped, pulling out his multispectral scanner. They're not just decorative, they're a language. Anya, quick to react, began scanning the nearest wall, while Khalid kept a wary eye on the approaching construct, ready to distract it if necessary. The scanner hummed, converting the alien script into a series of complex wave patterns. Aris, a polyglot with a deep understanding of ancient linguistics, began to see patterns, subtle grammatical structures that resonated with forgotten Proto-Afro-Asiatic languages. It was a monumental leap of intuition, a desperate gamble. It's a dialect related to early Egyptian hieratic, but far more abstract, he muttered, furiously inputting algorithms into his portable deciphering program. Just as the sentinel reached them, its mechanical arm poised to strike, Aris's program flashed a tentative translation on his screen. It was a warning, a command sequence, but also a snippet of historical record. It says, "Intruder detected. Containment protocol active. Unauthorized access will result in system purging." The last part was garbled, but the meaning was clear. "Containment protocol? What does that mean?" Anya asked, her voice laced with fear. Suddenly, a new set of symbols on the wall next to them began to glow faintly. Aris, with a sudden flash of insight, noticed a sequence in the glowing symbols that matched a pattern he'd just partially translated. "It's a bypass. A sequence to disengage the sentinel," he yelled. "Quick, Anya, input these coordinates into the monolith's interface." He pointed to the sequence of glowing symbols on the wall, and Anya, with trembling fingers, began to trace them on the smooth surface of the central monolith. The air thrummed with tension, the fate of the team hanging by a thread as the sentinel's red eye glared, its mechanical arm drawing closer. As Anya meticulously traced the glowing symbols on the monolith, the giant construct shimmered with an internal light. The sentinel, just inches from them, halted its advance, its glowing red eye flickering erratically. A low, electronic whine emanated from it, as if struggling against an overridden command. The air in the chamber crackled with energy, and then, with a final, shuddering sigh, the sentinel powered down, its lights fading, leaving them in near darkness, save for the faint glow of the monolith. Relief washed over them, but it was quickly replaced by a new kind of awe. The monolith, now fully activated, projected a holographic display above it. It was a sophisticated map, far more detailed than any satellite imagery, depicting not only the Sahara as it existed now, but also as it was thousands of years ago. A lush, verdant landscape crisscrossed by ancient rivers. Then the holographic projection shifted, displaying a series of historical records. Aris, using his newly acquired understanding of the ancient language, began to translate aloud, his voice filled with a mix of wonder and dread. "It's a record of a civilization. Aethel. They flourished here, in a green Sahara, thousands of years before the accepted timeline of Egypt. The images showed bustling cities, advanced technologies, and a thriving society. But then the projection shifted again, showing a devastating global catastrophe, a rapid climate shift, desertification. Their advanced systems struggled. They sought refuge, deep underground. The images depicted the construction of this very city, a desperate attempt to preserve their knowledge and their way of life. The most shocking revelation came next. The holograms showed Aethelian explorers, centuries later, emerging from their subterranean haven, encountering a nascent, struggling civilization along the Nile. Early Egyptians. The Aethelian records detailed their attempts to share knowledge, to warn of future environmental threats, and to guide the burgeoning civilization. But something went wrong. The projections showed increasing conflict, a rejection of Aethelian wisdom, and then a cataclysm. A final image flickered, depicting the terrifying collapse of a major ancient city, unmistakably an early Egyptian metropolis, not by foreign invasion, but by internal strife and environmental collapse, mirroring the Aethelian warnings that had gone unheeded. The chilling implication settled in. This lost civilization hadn't merely existed alongside ancient Egypt. It had been deeply intertwined with its tragic downfall. The implications of the monolith's revelations were staggering. The collapse of ancient Egypt, far from being a singular event, was intricately linked to the forgotten history of Aethel. The holographic projections continued, showing how Aethel had attempted to intervene, to share their advanced agricultural techniques and environmental management systems, only to be met with suspicion and resistance from the nascent Egyptian dynasties. They saw Aethel's knowledge as a threat to their emerging power structures. Aris translated, his voice low with a mix of anger and sorrow. They twisted the warnings, labeling the Aethelians as sorcerers, as bringers of misfortune. The projections showed subtle, then overt, conflicts. Aethelian attempts at peaceful integration turned into desperate pleas for understanding, then into quiet withdrawal as the desert consumed their former homeland. The true horror unfolded when the environmental conditions worsened for Egypt. The Aethelian records detailed how the Nile, once a lifeblood, became unpredictable due to widespread desertification. Crop failures, famine, and internal strife, exacerbated by the rejection of Aethel's sustainable practices, led to a rapid societal breakdown, mirroring the Aethelians' own past struggles, but without their advanced solutions. The terrifying collapse wasn't a military defeat, but a slow, agonizing environmental and social unraveling, precisely what Aethel had warned them about. So, Aethel witnessed the fall of Egypt, Anya murmured, her eyes wide with the weight of the historical revision, and perhaps they felt responsible for not being able to prevent it. The final sequence of holograms showed the Aethelians sealing off their subterranean city, retreating deeper, becoming guardians of knowledge, waiting for a time when humanity might be ready to listen. There was a sense of profound melancholy in the final images, a civilization bearing witness to the self-destruction of another, leaving behind only the sentinel to protect their wisdom from being misused again. The air in the chamber grew cold, thick with the echoes of a forgotten tragedy. They weren't just discovering a lost city, they were witnessing a lost truth, one that rewrote the very foundation of human civilization. This changes everything. What does this mean for our understanding of history? Subscribe now to uncover the full story and join the discussion. With the knowledge from the monolith, Aris, Anya, and Khalid understood the Aethelian city not as a tomb, but as a time capsule, a library of critical wisdom. Their immediate priority became to document everything, carefully cataloguing the artifacts and inscriptions now decipherable. The sentinel, powered down but looming, served as a stark reminder of the city's long-held secrets. They discovered elaborate water purification systems, self-sustaining energy sources, and detailed botanical gardens that replicated the ancient, verdant Sahara. It was a testament to their incredible ingenuity and their commitment to long-term survival. Aris focused on the environmental records, finding detailed analyses of climate patterns and predictive models that were eerily accurate, even millennia later. They predicted this, Aris said, pointing to a holographic projection of current global climate data, overlaying it with Aethelian predictions. The desertification, the shifting weather patterns, they saw it coming for themselves, and they saw it coming for Egypt, and their models for our future, they're dire. The Aethelian records contained stark warnings about unchecked resource depletion and the consequences of ignoring ecological balance. Khaled, who had always viewed the desert with a pragmatic respect, found himself deeply moved. My elders speak of a time when the desert was not so harsh. They thought it was just legend. But this is real. He touched an ancient Aethelian farming tool, feeling a connection to the ingenuity of a people who once made this land flourish. The atmosphere in the subterranean city was no longer one of silent dread, but of urgent revelation. They were not just archaeologists, they were now custodians of a vital message. The Aethelians had preserved this knowledge not for their own return, but for future generations who might finally heed their warnings. The weight of this responsibility pressed heavily upon them. The outside world, oblivious to the history beneath their feet, continued on a perilous path, repeating the mistakes of a civilization long forgotten. The team knew they couldn't keep this discovery a secret. The Aethelian records contained not just historical insights, but also blueprints for sustainable technologies and a dire warning for humanity's future, a future that was rapidly approaching a critical point. Their first attempt to transmit data from deep within the city proved difficult due to the dense rock formations. Returning to the surface, they faced a new challenge. Their satellite phone, their only link to the outside world, had a weak signal. The desert climate, previously just an inconvenience, now felt like an active obstacle. Sandstorms brewed on the horizon, threatening to engulf their camp and bury the entrance they had just meticulously secured. The pressure mounted. Aris decided they needed to move quickly. "We'll set up a temporary comm station on the highest dune," he instructed. "Anya, you focus on getting a stable signal. Khaled, secure the camp and prepare for the storm." The vast, empty landscape, once a symbol of their isolation, now became a symbol of the immense difficulty in broadcasting their monumental discovery. As Anya struggled with the satellite uplink, sweat stinging her eyes, a familiar sense of doubt crept in. Would the world even believe them? A hidden civilization, a direct link to ancient Egypt's downfall, and a warning about humanity's own self-destruction. It sounded like the plot of a fictional thriller. But the reality of the Aethelian city, silent and profound beneath the sand, was irrefutable. The winds picked up, carrying stinging sand, obscuring the setting sun. The desert, unforgiving and indifferent, was asserting its power. They were racing against time, against the elements, and against the deep-seated skepticism of the world they were trying to warn. The fate of their discovery, and perhaps a piece of humanity's future, hung in the balance, dependent on a fragile satellite signal connecting them to a world unaware of the profound truth buried beneath the Sahara. Against the backdrop of a brewing sandstorm, Anya finally managed to establish a shaky satellite connection. They had prioritized the most critical data: the Aethelian records of environmental collapse, their sustainable technologies, and the chilling account of ancient Egypt's demise. Aris, his voice hoarse but filled with conviction, recorded a message addressing the global scientific community and anyone who would listen. He spoke of the lost civilization of Aethel, their advanced knowledge, and their profound warning. "We have unearthed not just a city, but a truth," Aris declared into the microphone, the wind whipping his words. "A truth about civilizations that rose and fell, not by conquest, but by failing to listen to the whispers of the earth." He presented the translated Aethelian data, showing the parallels between their ancient downfall and current global environmental trends. Khaled stood by, a silent, powerful testament to the land and its forgotten wisdom. The transmission was uploaded, a fragile beacon of ancient knowledge sent out into the digital ether. They watched the upload bar slowly fill, a tense silence punctuated only by the roaring wind and the crackling of the satellite dish. When it was complete, a collective sigh of relief mingled with exhaustion escaped them. They had done their part. As the sandstorm fully enveloped their camp, forcing them to retreat into their vehicles for shelter, Aris looked back at the hidden entrance to the Aethelian city, now completely obscured by swirling sand. The discovery had changed them. It had been a journey not just into the earth, but into the very heart of human folly and resilience. The next day, as the storm cleared, revealing a newly sculpted desert landscape, they knew their fight was far from over. The world would react with disbelief, skepticism, and perhaps eventually understanding. But the message was out. The Aethelians, through Aris, Anya, and Khaled, had finally delivered their warning, bridging millennia to offer humanity a second chance to learn from the terrifying collapse of ancient civilizations. The future was now dependent on whether humanity would finally choose to listen. This incredible journey has reached its conclusion, but the impact of this discovery is just beginning. To stay updated on the real-world implications of these types of archaeological finds and to explore more compelling stories, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring these vital narratives to light.